Hello, and welcome to our March NABBW Financial Podcast. Tonight, I'm with regular guest Pam Sams to discuss a very important and timely topic. She's here to talk about financial spring cleaning. No mops or scrub brushes necessary, but instead, 10 steps to ensuring your financial life is on track. Spring officially started about 10 days ago, even though it might not look like it in all parts of the country. Thankfully, there's no snow here right now, but uh, so as our daylight starts to last longer, it's time to think spring. And that means more than packing away our heavy winter boots and coats and sporting a fun new pedicure to complement a kicky new pair of wedge sandals. I know that sounds funny for me to say, but I used to be all about the shoes. So anyway, we all know that the reason we do spring cleaning is to get rid of all the dust and grime that has settled into our homes during the winter months in order to enjoy living in a cleaner, fresher, and happier environment. We're not only healthier as a result, but the physical and mental refresh is mood boosting and mentally clarifying, which is why Pam is here tonight. She's suggesting that we don't just limit our spring refresh to physical space. Instead, we need to direct some of our deep cleaning energy toward our financial habits to make room for greater financial health this year. Why? Well, because over time our needs change as we meet our short and midterm goals and we begin to set new goals. We really need to review our long term goals too to make sure they truly represent our current situation and make tweaks where needed. Financial advisors like Pam always advise us that by taking these steps once a year, we can steer our financial lives where we want them to go rather than let them and ourselves drift aimlessly downstream, kind of like we're on a lazy river ride. I'm particularly looking forward to the tips Pam will be providing tonight because a lot has changed in my life in the past year. And that's why Pam is here tonight. She wants to remind us that now's the time to haul out our financial dustpan and set aside a part of some upcoming weekend to clean up our personal finances and do some planning. And she promises that when we do this, we'll be in far better financial shape at year's end than when we were when the year started. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Audiences, before Pam and I dive into our discussion about financial spring cleaning, let me properly introduce this call. I'm Ann Holmes, your moderator and the boomer in chief of the National Association of Baby Boomer Women, an organization dedicated to educating and empowering women at midlife and beyond. And with me, Pamela J. Sams, BFA, CRPC, MBA, and trusted advisor to professional women. The CRPC stands for Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor, and Pam is that and NABBW's Retirement Planning Associate. An expert in personal finance, Pam is president of Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies in Herndon, Virginia, and a monthly guest who covers important information related to money and financial planning. Welcome, everyone, to our spring cleaning financial Zoom call covering obviously spring cleaning with the goal of updating our financial planning, getting rid of all the cobwebs and the accumulated stuff that we don't need anymore. We're glad you've joined us. Now, before we can launch into tonight's discussion, I need to play a quick audio clip just to keep us legal.
Securities offered through Securities America Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Incorporated, a SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Pamela Sams, investment advisor representative. Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies, Securities America Incorporated, and all other entities named are separate entities.
All right. That said, thanks for joining us again, Pam.
Thank you very much for having me again, Ann, and happy Women's History Month. I know we only got a couple of days left, but I just wanted to put that in there.
Well, thank you. It's a good month for women. We have, I think, International Women's Day is in March, and we just need to celebrate ourselves. So I'm glad that we're having March to do that, and we can proceed and hopefully get some more celebrations going on. But at this point, I want to get ourselves into our discussion, Pam, and you have 10 points that you'd like to cover tonight. And your first point is set or check on progress for financial goals for the year?
Yeah, so here we are at basically the end of March, and that means we're putting Q1 in the bed, basically the first 3 months
Hmm.
of the year. So really, when you're clear on your long-term financial goals, you can really work backwards to set your midterm financial goals over, the course of the year. So really resetting what happened the first 3 months of this year, to really check where you have fallen short or perhaps have overachieved, which is also a great thing. But really looking at, taking an assessment. So either where you have been progressing, or if you were one of those people who set goals in the beginning of the year with the financial resolutions or the New Year's resolutions and didn't get back to it. This would be also a good time when you do financial spring cleaning to set those financial goals for the year as well, both short and long term. So really looking at setting and reviewing your long term, midterm, and short term goals, and really evaluating your immediate monthly to-dos when as it comes to your financial goals, taking an assessment of where are you on track? Have you are you way behind and you need to kind of tweak some things and make some adjustments? This would be a good time to do that when you're cleaning out that proverbial dustpan with your finances.
Hmm. All right. Um, that's a good beginning. The next step, point number 2 for you on your list is review your financial documents.
Yes. So you want to double check what's going on with your documents. And if you have a lot, and then you mentioned earlier, and is that spring cleaning is all about really taking cleaning out and cleaning up. So this would be a good time to review your financial documents, knowing where they are, keep track of all of your important documents. If you need to do something that's, I know a lot of times people, and I still have them as well, big file cabinets with important paperwork on there. You may want to consider at this point, those important documents, moving them digitally to back them up
Hmm.
through a couple of different systems, automating backup system, uploading things. I'm in the process as well of uploading and scanning a lot of documents, both for myself and my clients, and keeping a digital storage, so to speak, so I can cut down on some of the clutter and I don't have to, and making sure it's organized and I know where things are. So when you start reviewing your financial documents, know, of course, where they are, um, how you can access them efficiently. If you do still use hard copies, look at how long you need to keep them. A lot of times people like, I have statements from, 1984. You probably don't need to have that detailed. So clean out what you need to keep the important documents. Maybe consider a file or electronic file storage system if you scan the certain documents. What I do as well with my clients with financial documents, anything that they want to share with me, I have an online vault for each of my clients that allows them to upload some of those important financial documents. So at least they know it's safe in that aspect, and or if something happened to them, then they know I'm kind of the point of contact that will be able to provide at least documentation or copies for your loved ones if that needs to be done as well. So you want to review them, make sure you know where they are, consider storing them electronically if you can. And if you do keep hard copies, make sure you do have like a fireproof safe or something that's portable,
Hmm.
because that's what, a lot of times you hear people's homes unfortunately catching on fire. A lot of those important documents were lost because it wasn't in a fireproof safe or someplace uh, that you can get to for that. So if you keep it electronically and digital, you'll have a copy there. If you do have the hard copies, make sure you have a fireproof safe, and then know how to access that accordingly.
Okay. Point number 3, review monthly expenses and budget.
You know we we're gonna get through this call without talking about a budget, right?
I
I was
think that
gonna put it at
our
the top of my
listeners,
list, but I thought we would get down to
I think,
point three.
right. Well, I think our listeners would think that we've been, taken by aliens if we don't talk about
Yeah,
budget. It's just
exactly.
part of our
That's
rules.
it's just part of our rule. We got to talk about that. Especially like I said, here we are at the, kind of month three, putting that in the books and putting that to bed. Is that unfortunately things have gone up, expenses have gone up, gas prices, food, you name it. This would be a good time to kind of take an assessment on your spending, what happened the first 3 months of this year. Were some categories out of sorts that I end up spending more in certain categories. The one that I see a lot is definitely dining out and eating out. A lot of
Hmm.
these convenient delivery services now that we have at the ready on our speed dial, so to speak. And
Right.
it makes it really convenient. So, going through
Hmm.
looking at are there areas that you can cut back. So really, I know people hate kind of the dreaded B word or budgeting. It just really conjures up thoughts of I gotta sacrifice or give something up, some of the comforts that you enjoy. And it's not all about that. It's an awareness tool. Budgeting is awareness
Hmm.
tool first and foremost. So really knowing how much you're spending, if there's areas that you can spend less and then save more. So this would be a good time to take a look at, kind of the budget and your lifestyle. Are there things in there that you're totally overspending on that don't need to be there? I know there is definitely a cost of living increase because of things have gone up,
Hmm.
but if there are some things that, just flat out you probably don't need to be spending that much on or spending on at all, this would be a good time to do that and then really get back to prioritizing what's important to you, when it comes to your budget. You always use
Hmm.
the kind of the T chart area, exercise, a needs and a wants category. Look at your expenses. Is
Hmm.
it categorize it as a need and or a want? I know some people's wants are quite different. For my husband, NFL, Sunday ticket is a want type of thing during the
Hmm.
football season. I mean, I'm sorry, that's a
Right.
need for him during football season,
Hmm.
where everybody else could have categorized it as a want. So, be
Right.
give yourself some grace. So if there are some things on there that, hey, you definitely need, I know a lot of people, a lot of women, we need, facials and manicures and all of these things. If that's a need for you, definitely put it in the needs category. But no, there may be something else on the other side that you can, kind of counterbalance, so to speak. If you're
Hmm.
going to put that in your budget and that's how much you're going to spend, are there areas where you can cut back, for as well?
Sure. It's all a balancing act, I think. And I know for me, uh, I'll just give you a funny, to me, it's a funny little example, which is pure maple syrup.
Yeah.
Um, I I grew up with my mother buying um, pancake syrup, which was not
Mhm.
maple syrup, but was,
Yes.
it's what we had on our pancakes. But my grandfather uh, used to go to what was called a sugar bush, and he would buy maple syrup that they had made from
Mhm.
actual sap of maple trees. And when I had pancakes at my grandpa's house, the pancakes were so much better than the ones my mother made, which of course, she wasn't too happy about that. But so I grew up saying to myself, when I'm an adult, I'm going to have real maple syrup. And so I have had real maple syrup, but the maple syrup jug in my refrigerator is getting very, very low. And I've priced maple syrup. And at the moment,
Mhm.
I'm saying, I am not spending over $10 for a bottle of maple syrup. I'm sorry, Grandpa, but it's not that high on my list. So,
Yes,
so I think for
exactly.
me, that's for me one of my examples of the balancing is, there's certain things that I guess I could say is maple syrup a need or a want, and
Uh-huh.
it's it's really a want and not a thing I need to have. Although I might not make things anymore that require maple syrup. That
Mhm.
probably wouldn't hurt either. But let me
Exactly.
stop us
But it
from
is
being
it
off
is
track here.
definitely I mean that's definitely quite the example, because what we have been used to, especially now, like I said, with prices increasing, you go to the
Mhm.
store, for me and my husband, we love, granola cereal, and granola now, a
Mhm.
box of cereal, and they've cut back. They've been really tricky with downsizing the amount that they put in
The
by,
box.
using the
Mhm.
box difference, right? And so you're getting
Right.
less, but then granola is a little bit more expensive than most cereals, and you ask yourself, hey, do I want to spend, like you said, close to, $8 or $9 for a box of cereal? It's one of those
Right.
things. If you do, then that's fine, but if there's ways to cut back on other things that may not be as expensive, so you have to consider that when you, so like you said, it's definitely a balancing act when it comes to
Mhm.
your expenses and your budget. That's the things that I go through a lot with my clients, is that, they make really good money, and then they're trying to figure out, why am I not bringing home, or, why am I not seeing that? And so a lot of it deals with their spending and not prioritizing their budget. When you bring in a certain
Mhm.
amount of money and you think you have it, unfortunately, you end up being a little bit more thrift than you usually would, versus somebody who makes a lower salary and they're counting mostly every penny. They can prioritize
Mhm.
and know where those dollars are going. So it's all about really just knowing where your expenses are, what's discretionary, what's necessary, and then making some choices and putting it into a budget.
All right. I have left my pen over on the other side of my desk here, and so I can't check off where we are
Yes.
unless I go over there and get the pen. But I think
Mhm.
we're at point number 4, which is plan and budget for irregular expenses for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so, having this conversation with the client earlier, is that there are things or expenses that just pop up, what we call those fly in the ointment sort of things that happens with people's budgets. Things come up such as weddings and baby showers and holiday gifts and birthday gifts, and all of these things that are not in our day-to-day budget. So they're
Right?
expenses that, that don't pop up every month. So it's hard to really gauge the cost of those particular items. So if you plan accordingly, like we have summer coming up in the next few months, are you going to, take a larger trip? And then if so, how much is
Mhm.
that going to cost you? All of the souvenirs, whatever the case may be. So planning accordingly on your vacations and your trip spending. So I go through this exercise with clients, is that we kind of put their goal sheets together. It's like, okay, travel is on there. How much do you generally spend
Mhm.
on travel? Is it 1 or 2 trips a year? Is it how much do you generally spend on these trips, and try to get them to understand it's not just, okay, I'm going on vacation and we haven't planned accordingly for any irregular expenses. Same thing with, if there's a certain amount of, birthday gifts that you're going to get, pretty much everybody in your family, on how much, when people's birthdays are, how do you have a kind of a birthday budget set aside for that? Same thing with baby showers or holiday gifts, especially holiday gifts. So, Christmas can definitely blow any well played, well
Oh yeah.
planned budget
Right.
out of whack. So really, hey, are we going to do a Secret Santa where everybody just kind of picks somebody and we're responsible for that? Or am I getting gifts for everybody? That can make a huge difference in your budget if you plan on buying everybody a gift. I know, a couple of my in-laws, they decided that's what they do, is that we each year we pick a Secret Santa. Everybody picks a
Mhm.
person out of the hat, and that's who we're responsible for. It makes it a lot easier and a lot more cost efficient. So we're not like buying everybody in the family a gift for that. So,
Right.
but if you do, then know that's what you're going to do and plan accordingly. Um, but you have to kind of figure it out within your regular means of your budget. For example, the client I was working with today, unfortunately, she had a lot of a flooding. She had a flooded basement, so she didn't plan for the deductible. That's $1,000 deductible. Now you have to consider out
Mhm.
of your budget. That's where that cash reserves talks about, and we always talk about that too, is our emergency fund.
Mhm.
That's where that comes into play, is that you have some of these irregular expenses that pop up. How am I going to deal with it throughout the year? Do I take some from my cash reserve to pay for these things, or set aside a budget for those irregular expenses throughout the year, the holidays, the travel, the gift giving, the birthdays, and things like that. So it's really just making sure you set aside a money accordingly for these particular irregular expenses that happen throughout the year.
Mhm. Absolutely true. And I've started doing some reading recently where weddings are getting more and more
Mhm.
expensive, especially because so many couples are opting for the take everybody to
Mhm.
a tropical island kind of vacation, and then you're not just saying, "Oh, well, I've got my travel expenses to get to wherever they live and a gift for them," but now you're talking about possibly airfare and new clothes
Mhm.
and all kinds of things that really could mess up someone's well-planned budget.
Mhm.
I I
Exactly.
read
Yeah.
something recently where someone was saying, "Please do not have a destination wedding. We can't afford a destination
We
wedding. Your
can't.
family."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
I know. Which is funny because I had that same conversation with the client earlier as well. Is that her sister is getting married, and she's planning a destination wedding and matching outfits for the sisters and all of this
Oh,
stuff. And she's like, "Wait, it's like time out. I have a budget."
right. That's true. And I really resonated with your point number 5, Pam, and so I'm glad it's on the list because it's cancel unused and unnecessary subscriptions.
Yeah, that's what gets people a lot. And I do, a similar presentation for AARP where I talk about kind of the things that can creep in on your budget, and some of it are uh, the subscriptions that we signed up for. And like anything, and I'm sure you remember, Ann, back in the day where we had the Columbia House, records, and you get to
Mhm.
pay a penny and you get whatever. And next thing you know, that's what they do. They keep sending you a CD a month or whatever the case may be. And you're just so tired that you just don't go and cancel it. You just keep receiving it. And
Mhm.
that's what happens when we sign up for subscriptions, is that we feel it's $5 here, $6 here, whatever it is, and you don't feel it that much, and we get lazy and we're tired and we don't cancel these subscriptions. And we just kind of keep letting it run in the background. And I'm not going to deny I am really bad when it comes to that as well. I
Mhm.
love video streaming and music and all of this. So I probably have so many of these subscriptions that I do need to cancel as well. And that's what I do at the end of each year and the beginning of the year, kind of when I'm doing my New Year's resolution and then revisiting kind of what happened, the kind of the year end
Mhm.
review. It's what I do. It's like, are there things that I'm really just not using at all? Do I really need that? That note app, or do I need this particular thing? And so that's what happens. So if there's subscriptions that you have either monthly or annually, the annual ones are really bad because you don't know they until they hit your
Right.
account. You signed up for them, and then you pay annually. It's like, wait a minute, where's this $100 come from? And it's something you signed up for, but you forgot to cancel.
Oh,
uh,
I know
so
those things make me so mad, and I have to tell you that earlier this month, I re-signed up for my subscription to the New York Times, which I
hmm
love subscribing to the
yeah,
New York Times,
yep.
and they I let my subscription expire, so then they gave me a special deal. I could get $50 for the whole year.
hmm
So I was thinking, oh, well, that looks good. But then I start reading the smaller print, and it says, that after the first year, then it
hmm
will revert to $50 a month. So,
hmm
so I said, and they're going to try to get you with this, it. So I actually went and put a note on my calendar in 2024 for when I have to cancel the New York
Hmm.
Times subscription, because it said I can cancel anytime. So
Yeah.
I've actually got a note to tell me the month before they're going to start charging me $50 a month instead of $50 for the year. It says cancel New York Times subscription. So I can't
Hmm.
believe I'm that organized, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm giving it a try.
Give it a try. I know I have to do the same thing, is that they give you these, 14-day trials or 7-day trials, whatever. I have to make a note to say, okay, if I'm not going to keep it after that, definitely call them to cancel
Mhm.
doing that. But kind of the litmus test is, to think about is, do you use the subscription multiple times in a week? And or does it make your life noticeably better? So that's kind of
Mhm.
the litmus test for the subscription. For example, for gym memberships, that's what happens a lot of times. We sign up for gym at the beginning of the year. We like, hey, I'm gonna get fit and all of this. So you do sign up and then you don't end up going. So if you have
Mhm.
been to the gym at least, 10 times in the last month or 5 times or however, then it's a likelihood that, that justifies keeping the membership. If it's only been once or twice, you may want to,
Mhm.
maybe switch to a home workout or kind of a pay as you go type of thing, where you're able to do it that way versus keeping an expensive gym membership or subscription for that. So, that's a good exercise, especially, here we are, spring cleaning our finances 3 months into the
Mhm.
year. Did we sign up for stuff through the kind of the month of January, let's say, to make your life easier? It's like, hey, nutrition apps or whatever, and you're like, I
Mhm.
have a good
Right.
intention that I'm gonna eat right and I'm gonna get these things, but if you haven't used it or you're using it sporadically, then you may want to consider, canceling any of those unused or unnecessary subscriptions. But it does take some time to kind of go through and just kind of look at your back to your budget and your expenses. What are you spending money on? Also look at these kind of annual type of subscriptions you have, the antivirus, any backup services, anything like that that's billed
Mhm.
annually. So when it's going to hit, number one, so that, $100 shows up or $200 shows up, and you're like, wait, I didn't plan for that. Know when
Mhm.
these things are going to reoccurring charges are going to happen in your budget as well. But this is where the time where you would start spring cleaning some of those things in your expense sheet and cancel any of those unnecessary subscriptions.
Very good. I've also noticed recently I'm getting invoices in my email for things that I've never subscribed to before, and it's things that I'm thinking, did I ever subscribe to that
Hmm.
before? And so then usually it's not. So then it's you know just important to be aware of what you actually do subscribe to that you want, as you're saying,
Hmm.
something that you're going to use, because otherwise, don't let this whoever they are that send you an email start
Uh-huh.
getting you stuck into some other subscription that you didn't even look for. They just threw it at
Hmm.
you and you said
Yeah, they
okay.
just threw that through. Exactly. And also, you mentioned that, there's a lot of scam going out that way as well. Is that, hey, you signed up for this thing and blah blah blah, whatever they say, and it could actually be a scam to, have you, subscribe or get your information. So be cognizant of a lot of things that are going out that way as well via email when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to those. So like you said, knowing what you subscribe to, so you won't fall victim to any of those scams.
All right. Point number 6, something you've said before but still got to say it again, and I don't know how many people do it. You'll have to tell me about that, but
Yeah.
start an emergency fund.
Yes. And it's becoming a little bit, but what I'm seeing is people are starting to accumulate a little bit more cash, especially now that interest rates are up and people are getting a little bit more on their cash that they've set aside for that. So really, back to what we talked about with knowing what your expenses are, and then if something pops up in your budget and throws it off, you have an emergency fund that will be able to kind of do a catch-all on that to save
Mhm.
yourself, so you're not, scrambling to figure out how I'm going to pay for it, and or start using your credit card, because that's what happens is that
Mhm.
you start putting a lot of credit stuff on your credit card and accumulating debt. Whereas if you had an emergency fund, you would be able to pay for some of those things out of that particular rainy day or emergency fund or cash reserve, whichever name you
Mhm.
want to call it. But it's really setting aside about, rule of thumb, about 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses in a cash reserve account. Now, like I said, most of the bank accounts are paying, 2, 3, 4%. So really finding some place to park your cash as you start building it is where you really want to
Mhm.
focus in on. But having a cushion account or an emergency fund is beneficial to your overall financial wellness. So you don't have to rely on credit cards or debt or building up or accumulating debt. Having that side account is where you want to really the savings that you need to put aside. So even if you start small, looking at 3 to 6 months worth of expenses sometimes could be a daunting or feel like it's not achievable. Just start where you are, putting aside something a little bit out of your paycheck
Mhm.
or your checking account or a savings account each month, and then it's just starting small and building it up.
Right. Very good advice. Number 7, prioritize debt and control credit.
Mhm. Yes. So that's I kind of partnered that with with the cash reserve or emergency fund,
Mhm.
is that if you're not controlling your debt or controlling your credit, then that's what ends up happening is that you end up bringing on a lot more debt, which ultimately affects your credit and your credit score. So prioritizing how you want to pay down your debt, the debt ratio is no more than 30%. I like to tell people to keep at least maybe 20 or 25%. Don't even try to get close to that 30. But what they look at is kind of the debt ratio that you have. So if you have cards and you're up to the limit on it and you're way over the 30% utilization, then your credit's going to be affected, because that's how they evaluate what your credit utilization is. So if it's over 30, they start dinging you after that. So know how to prioritize. If we're in month 3 of the year and you're still working on paying off debt from Christmas or holidays or things like that, this is the time where evaluate where you are with paying down the debt that you accumulated on your credit card, and then have a game plan on how you're going to pay it off efficiently, and try to keep those numbers under that 30% utilization. Um, that's again controlling your credit and your credit score. They're not going to lend you any more credit if you can't optimize or prioritize your debt and how you're going to pay it efficiently. If they see you using way too much or you have your debt balances too high, then like I said, that will affect the use of credit, but also your credit score. So that's what I mean there is really just making sure you have a game plan to pay down your debt, have a debt reduction strategy. There are a couple of different ways that I use with my clients or I explore with them. One is a snowball where you pay down the smallest balances first, and then you basically put the next debt onto and then pay the minimum on the others. You have basically an accelerator margin. So if you're able to put an extra 50 or $100 towards the debt, that goes
Mhm.
on to that first smallest one, and then everybody else gets paid the minimum. And then when that smallest debt is paid off, it goes on to the next debt and to the next debt and to the next debt. That's why it's called a snowball. The other one is the reverse, which is an avalanche. So you're really focused on paying the highest interest rate cards first with that. And then same strategy. As you pay off the highest interest rate, you go to the next and to the next. The thing about the avalanche sometimes, because some of these balances tend to be a little bit larger, Some people, you don't see the needle move as much, and it really gets it's hard to keep motivation when you don't see
Mhm.
it, because you're working with, it's going to save you definitely money and interest, but you're not going to see it move as much as if you had knocked out these smaller balances first. But either one that you use, have a strategy to pay off your debt and how to prioritize paying it off, either through a snowball method or avalanche, or a combination. That's where you want to focus in on with that, and keep your utilization score percentage under the 30%. So you would be able to control your credit and your credit score. Um, you're allowed each year, from the three credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, a copy of your report for free. It's called annualcreditreport.com, not freecreditreport.com. They rope you into buying some subscriptions, and we just talked about that. So if you don't use it
Mhm.
all the time, you don't need it. But Annual Credit Report will give you a copy of your credit report, not your score, because unfortunately they'll charge for that. But you can see what's on your credit report annually, and you don't have to wait if you're denied for credit or whatever. But I know we've had this conversation before, and at least you're aware of what's on there. So when you do go apply for credit, you're not having hit with these nasty surprises that is something on there that number one may not be yours, or number two that's old and should be, or that you satisfy and it should be off. So it just allows you to check the accuracy of what's on your credit report at least annually. So during the spring cleaning your finances time period, and you're working on prioritizing paying down your debt and controlling your credit, pulling a copy of your credit report could be a good thing to do during this time period, so you know what's going on, especially if you start, a lot of people are well, maybe not buying homes now, but if they're buying new cars or things like that, and just knowing where you stand with your credit before you go apply for credit is a good thing during this time period where you're spring cleaning your finances.
Right. Point number 8, adjust tax withholding if needed.
Yeah, so here we are in a few weeks from taxes on
Mhm.
2022 taxes. So if you got a refund, a lot of times, I know it's a different philosophy when it comes to receiving refunds. I always tell clients, and what I teach people is that you need to break even with Uncle Sam, and not get big refunds, because that means you're overpaid, and then the Uncle Sam kept your money for a year, and then basically had an interest-free loan on your dime. So that's what you want to do. But so if you got a tax refund last year and or this year, or you even owe the IRS, that means you need to do tax withholding, need some tweaking. So 3 months into the year will be a good time to check your withholding, see what, once people fill out their W-4 on their at their job, sometimes it's set it and forget it. And then, HR
Mhm.
gives you this big packet, you fill out a bunch of stuff, you turn it in, and then you don't go revisit it. The
Right.
W-4 is one of those things that you want to look at on a consistent basis, especially as your family changes. If you get married or you get divorced or you have children, that number is going to change. So you want to update and tweak your tax withholdings um, a little more consistently than you would, or at least revisiting to see where you are. So withholding too much, like I said, you're going to give Uncle Sam an interest-free loan. Withholding too little, then you end up getting hit with IRS penalties for not taking out enough taxes. So the aim again is zero tax bill when it comes to April 15th. This year is April 18th, because I think it's either Washington D.C. tax day, or I think it falls on a weekend or something like that. So you got until April 18th this year. But you want to adjust your income tax withholdings with your employer as necessary, or really consult your tax professional would also be helpful to just say where you are. So if you get a big refund and you like receiving the big refunds, you don't need to do any withholding. It may be a forced savings tactic for you. I have a lot of clients that do that. It's like, Yeah, Pam, that's great that we want to break even with Uncle Sam, but I like the big tax refund, so I'm gonna keep doing it. I say, as long as you know that's going on, it may be a forced savings. If you want to make some tweaks and adjustments, the IRS has a W-4 calculator that you can go on their website. You can do kind of a pro forma adjustment on how much or at least an estimate of how much you're gonna make for salary this year, and then it'll tell you pretty much how to fill out your W-4 accordingly. Because I know it can be confusing sometimes. It's line this, blah, blah, blah. You put zero.
Mhm.
I know it's really complicated. So a lot of times people will put in whatever they think is there, and it may not be accurate. So going to the W-4 calculator on the IRS website could be a good starting point if you do need to adjust your tax withholdings.
Good advice. Um, Point number 9, review health and life insurances.
Yes, and we always talk about this too, because the insurance programs are that. So I think Life Insurance Awareness Month was usually September time frame. And then I did a whole campaign on that, the benefits of life insurance and having enough. But your health insurance and life insurance requirements evolve over time. As I mentioned before, your life changes. You get older, you bring on kids, you may become divorced and or widowed. This is a good time to kind of see where your insurance programs are, and then really make adjustments accordingly. Sometimes that you can't make adjustments and at your employer plans until open enrollment unless there is a special circumstance that happened in your family. Either you got divorced or unfortunately you became a widow, or you have a child, whatever the case may be. Then you can make adjustments accordingly for that. So really just researching how much life insurance you need. So if you had a newborn, or um, if you added additional to your family, your life insurance needs
Mhm.
are probably going to increase, and you're going to need more there. Same thing with health insurance. Seeing where you are and seeing if there's a different phase of life that you need something different. Unfortunately, if you became sick or somebody in your family, the time period where health insurance, we just kind of take it for granted a lot of times is that we have it. But then if something catastrophic happens, or something happens and you end up having to use your health insurance, and you go and then you find out certain benefits aren't covered, or you got to pay out of pocket differently. You don't want any nasty surprises when that happens. So knowing
Right.
what is your in your health policy, what it's going to cover, how much out of pocket, what is your catastrophic limits, all of these things. Because again, just like with any employer plan, we sign up for a bunch of stuff during open enrollment. We don't revisit it again. And then when we go use these particular things is where we start to find out about them. So learning as you start spring cleaning your finances, what is your health insurance cover? What are my deductibles? What is my catastrophic limits? Does it cover certain things? Unfortunately, recently I had to go appeal a particular procedure that they didn't want to cover, like a CAT scan or something for some things. I'm fine, so there's nothing to it. But the doctor wanted to do some additional tests, and the insurance company came back and said, no, we're not going to cover that. And so I
Mhm.
appealed, and I'm able to get it now. But you need to know that for some reason there could be a denial on certain procedures, or scans or tests that they would not cover. So know what your insurance covers, so you don't end up making an appointment for something and then they come back and say, oh, we're not going to approve that. So this will be a good time to
Mhm.
dig into that. Same thing with your life policies, knowing how much you have for your life insurance. Do you have a permanent or temporary policy? A lot of times people are not even aware that they have either or, what the differences are. So this is a good time to dig into that as well. Uh, Consider an HSA if that's available through your employer, because it does have some unique tax benefits that are available to you. So if that's available, again, Usually during open enrollment is the time where you can get the HSAs and the benefits from that. But knowing that it's available through your employer, this is a good time to evaluate it so you know when open enrollment occurs that you want to take advantage of it as well. So reviewing your health insurance and life insurance during your spring cleaning is also a good thing to have as well. And ask questions of your employer benefits. Some things come on, some things fall off. Uh, See how it's going to affect your situation. I know I get that a lot of times with clients that the employer had a subsidized the health insurance, and then for a certain percentage, and then the next year they didn't, and so the premiums changed. So just knowing
Mhm.
what's going on with your health plans and your benefits to work.
Excellent. And point number 10, plan your retirement contributions.
Yeah. So I know a lot of times right now people don't want to even look at their statements on what's going on with their retirement plans. 2022 was a horrendous year when it came to the market. The only good thing about 2022 is that it's over. That's probably what most people say in terms of the market.
Me
And
too.
then
That's what
and
I
then
say.
yeah, and then unfortunately we had this whole bank hiccup thing, so that sent the markets scary as well. So really, with your retirement account, if you are contributing, you want to see how much you're contributing. It's best if you can maximize your 401k or your 403b or whichever retirement plan that you have access to, really to take advantage of the growth, and then also any matching contributions that your employer have if you have an employer sponsored plan. uh, just see where your target savings are. So we're 3 months into the year. If you are maximizing, you should have a certain number in there right now. And are you on track to have that? Or are you on track to have maximized it by the end of the year? What happens is that if you accelerate too fast, at some point you could end up maxing out kind of mid-year somewhere September. What happens is that your match stops whenever you stop. So if you equalize it out over the year, then at least between now and let's say until December for the rest of the year how much you need to set aside so you don't max out early if you're going to max it out, because you're going to miss out on the match when you do that. So if that happens, August, September, you've missed out on 2 or 3 months of matching. So you want to look at how you're tracking with your contributions as well. Know how much your employer is matching, or if they're matching at all. A lot of times where I run
Mhm.
into is that employees or some clients that I have not even sure how much their company is matching. So know this when you're planning your retirement contributions as well. This would be a good time to look at your allocation again. I know it's scary to open up your statements, but this is a good time to take a look. We're 3 months into the quarter. Year-to-date numbers were looking good until, like I said, the bank hiccup happened. So um, it may look a little different over the over the last two
Mhm.
weeks or so. But you don't want to be an ostrich. You want to take your head out of the sand. You want to open up your statements and see how you're allocated, seeing if you're taking on too much risk, because then you may see more red than green if your
Mhm.
portfolio is too aggressive. So this could be a good time to revisit with your financial professional as well to say, are these should I still be in these representing these particular funds, or should I still be taking on this amount of risk in my portfolio? What is my time horizon to my goal? And then planning accordingly. If you do need to increase, they did increase the numbers for the contributions to your plans. So max this year is 22.5. And if you're over 50, they allow you to do more. So the total between the maximized amount and the catch up, that's what they call it, over 50, is 30,000 that you can put into it. So they're being very generous and allowing you to put in more. The Secure Act 2.0, I think I mentioned that briefly in a couple of calls ago. That was the law change that occurred at the end of last year. It's really one of the largest bills that affect that really address the retirement crisis in America. So they're looking at, allowing you to put more money into your accounts. The RMDs will be much later now. They've changed the contribution limits as well into into traditional IRAs. So if you're not familiar with the Secure Act 2.0, just kind of Google it and find out. If you need more information, I'm always available to answer any questions as well. But this is where you want to look at your contributions. You also want to look at your allocation. You want to talk to your employer about any matching that they have. And then you want to look and make sure you're on track to maximize your 401k, but not or 403b or whichever plan you have. Make sure you're not going to max out prior to the end of the year because you're going to miss out on the match. But this is a good time, like I said, to do all of the spring cleaning and all of the dusting and all of the things you need to do
Hmm.
on all of the tips that we talked about. And then, with point 10, definitely your retirement contributions and your retirement plan.
Very good. That's a great list, and I appreciate um, reviewing all of those 10 points. I also have a couple of questions for you.
Mhm.
Um, First question would be, what is your best advice on helping us make sure that we set aside the time needed to do our financial spring cleaning?
Yeah, I know we're all busy these days when it comes
Right?
to everything that we're doing. But really, just I think I mentioned before in a previous call, financial date night, usually with if you have, couples, but you can do it by yourself if
Mhm.
you're single, is really trying to set aside a time to address your finances on an ongoing basis, either every 2 weeks or at the end of each week or once a month, however you need to do it. But and then with this whole financial spring cleaning, I know I talked about 10 different steps, and I know a lot of it takes some time. So with any spring cleaning, we take one room at a time, and we do
Mhm.
that, and
Right?
we follow a process, and we everything finds a home and all of that, and we throw out things. This is going to be a process as well. It's not going to be like an overnight thing. This is just a good starting point to really look at some of the things that you need to address. So if it takes you a couple of months or 3 months or whatever, we're in the first quarter. So maybe you're not done with spring cleaning into, the end of the second quarter, but it's a process that you're going to take a look at these particular areas of your finances. So you're just getting started with the spring cleaning. So just take us to one section if you need to just look at your retirement contributions or look at your tax withholding, especially since that's fairly fresh in your mind since April is right around the corner. With your taxes, maybe it's looking at your tax withholdings first, and then start looking at your credit. So really, just pick some areas that you want to focus in on, and then start from there.
Okay. Well, one more question, which I have based on the fact, which I've alluded to, I think, in earlier calls, but the knowledge that I gained this year when my husband sustained an injury that kept him in
Hmm.
hospitals and nursing homes for 4 months. A lot of everything that you've said was good information, but it was, for me, it was theoretical because, I
Hmm.
hadn't had any of these critical things happen really for quite a while in my life. But one of the things that I noticed uh, during the time that he was unable to be home, and thankfully, as much as it was an injury that kept him from being able to walk, but at least his brain was still there. So
Hmm.
so that meant
Yeah.
that I could ask him questions and he could tell me, because what I discovered is what I'm going to ask you is, what about making sure that the important people in your life have access to your important financial information, including things like, how do you run payroll? I mean, in our case, we have a
Hmm.
payroll, and I had to figure out how to run the payroll. Um, so in those kind of cases, in that sort of thing, if something like that happens to you, um, I guess I'm just wanting to make sure that um,
Hmm.
people do have a place where all of this information is available. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people might think that they should put the information in a password protected folder on a hard drive,
Hmm.
but then the person who needs to have the information has to know what the password
You
protected
have to know what the password
password
protected.
is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's, some of the things that I share with my clients as well is really putting together maybe like a thumb drive or, a lot of the different things,
Mhm.
with any, for example, for businesses, there's always what they call a standard operating procedure type of manual.
Mhm.
So as you're putting together your kind of your financials, important financial documents and things that need to be done, maybe putting together something similar, a standard operating procedure. This is how to run payroll. This is what's going to happen. This is who you need to contact. All of those different instructions. As well, if something happened to you or you become incapacitated and people needed to have access to your information. As I mentioned earlier in the call, for my clients, they get with their financial plan, they have access to their own vault where, it's kind of password protected. They can upload documents, they can do that. Um, and I'm kind of they have access to it where they can log in for their username, but I also, if it's shared documents, I can see that as well. So worst case scenario, people can contact me. That happened a few years ago where, um, unfortunately, one of my clients had passed away, and so his sisters, both of them, were beneficiaries. So they had no idea on where things were and what he had and what his social security number or any of this. At least I was kind of the point of contact that was able to retrieve some of this information that they needed. So either
Mhm.
you designate a person, in the event that something happens, this is who you need to contact, putting together similar to what businesses do, maybe a standard operating procedure is that, this
Mhm.
is who you contact to pay this bill or who this is how you would run payroll, whatever it is, and putting everything, documenting everything would be also the task to do during this time period as you're starting to do your financial spring cleaning, putting together something like that. And it doesn't take long. And then putting it maybe on a password protected thumb drive or, having a vault type of system. And then, like you said, making sure you give access to that designated person that you have.
Right. Well, that was something that was very frustrating for me because we have actual
Hmm.
employees, and then we
Yeah.
have contractors, and then we have um, independent um, people that we hire on a
Hmm.
contractual need, and it seems like each one of those entities gets paid a different way, which I never paid any attention to because it wasn't my job. But
Yeah.
it would have been so much more easy for me if they all got a salary, then
Yeah.
then I could just
Hmm.
write payroll checks for everybody. But no, it was more complicated than that, and so it was a good learning experience for me. But I
Hmm.
think I would say that what you're talking about uh, would be a definitely a good topic for one of your financial date
Yeah.
nights. You
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, those are really my only questions.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want to add? Otherwise,
Mhm. And no, I
I'll
think
just.
we covered all of the bases. And, the important thing, based on your first question, is that take it in stride. Really take it in pieces. Or if there's areas that you've already have under your belt, you don't have to refocus on those. Really look at the areas that you need to, and then set aside some time to do it. Like I said, the first one is kind of because it's right around the corner, or you may have
Right.
recently been through it, it would be the taxes. And if you need to make some adjustments, start there. The retirement planning piece as well. But the key is really just to set aside some time to kind of dust these things off, think about it, knowing uh, kind of the financial lay of the land, so to speak, with your finances. And like I said, since we're at the end of the first quarter, first 3 months of the year, this is a good time to start taking some assessment of what happened during these 3 months, Am I on track? Do I need to make some, do I need to course correct, so to speak, during
Mhm.
this time period? And just start to take a look at your overall finances during this time.
All right. Well, as always, Pam, it's been excellent talking to you, and I thank you for being my
Mhm.
guest and for providing our audience with this excellent checklist to help all of us freshen up our financial plans as we prepare, as you're saying, to turn the calendar page to April. It really is important that we all take the time to do this spring cleaning. We all need a reason to go through everything and sweep out our old spending habits, dust off the budget, catch up on late payments if there are any, and
Mhm.
of course, what you said, toss out your debt, plan for your future. So, thanks for recommending this topic
Mhm.
and for providing this excellent advice. Um, I always like to tell our audience at the end of this each call each month that we will be having another call in a
Mhm.
month. Usually it's the fourth Thursday of the month. So for April, that would be the 27th, and the
Mhm.
same situation podcast wise. Um, and I think that you've probably added everything that you wanted to
Mhm.
add for wrapping up the call. So I
Yep.
will just say to the audience listeners, thank you for joining us for this great call with Pamela Sams. If you have questions after the call, feel free to email them to Pamela@jacksonsams.com or go to her website at www.jacksonsams.com. And if you'd like to know more about the National Association of Baby Boomer Women, you can check out our website at www.nabbw.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/nabbw. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight,
Mhm.
and talk to you next month.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.